This true scary story is so bad that it sent somebody to the psych ward, and then what happens in the psych ward is absolutely insane. I am going to tell you that this story has a trigger warning for two different things: SA and harming yourself, except for this person wasn't really the one harming herself, but it has a trigger warning for that anyway. Guys, don't forget to subscribe to my YT account. I'm going to put it right here, and the link is also in my bio. I'm going to be telling a true scary story on there that I have not told yet tonight. I'll put the link for my YT right here and a link for Instagram right here. Okay, let's get started. Today's true scary story was sent to me by a girl named Kimberly. Kimberly said that she has been seeing this demon creature since she was 8 years old. She calls it Tall Man. Now, Tall Man is terrifying looking. He is 10 feet tall. He is literally made of skin and bones. He has no eyeballs. His mouth is stitched shut, and he's constantly crouched over in this position, just giving a shush motion all the time. At first, Kimberly saw Tall Man as a friend. He helped her steer clear of danger. She actually saw him for the first time when she was being SA'd for a couple of years, which is absolutely terrible. And he was all that she had because her friends told her that she had changed, probably because of what it was happening to her, and they kind of just left her. She was alone, left to her own devices with this Tall Man creature that was replicating a friend at the time. So sorry, Kimberly, that happened to you. Now, when Kimberly turned about 12 years old, Tall Man started to change a little bit. He used to be far away in distance, and he started to get closer to her. Then he started from his eyes, and when he would bleed from his eyes, he would grab her arm and he would grip her arm so tightly that it would leave cuts in her arms. And this became a problem because when she would wake up and she would go to her mom would see all these cuts all over her, and she would be like, "What is going on with you? What is happening?" And she's like, "I swear I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this." She was just petrified. She had no idea what to do. But her mom was like, "You're going to the hospital." So her mom takes her to the hospital, and the doctors look at the cuts and they cannot figure out where these cuts are coming from. They're not from a weapon. They're not from a person. They look like little holes, and they can't figure it out. As the years went on, Tall Man just became worse and worse. He actually started to take over Kimberly's body. Kimberly's mom said that sometimes she would find her in the kitchen in the middle of the night, and she would just go and grab a fork and then just walk back to her room. She would then wake up the next morning and she would have holes in her arms, and she went and told her mom, like, "Listen, something is going on with me. I'm waking up with all this stuff all over me. I have no idea what's happening." Now, her mom didn't believe her. Her mom thinks that she is doing this to herself. So she's like, "You're going to the ER again." So she takes her to the ER again, and they actually admit her into the psych ward for ideation, even though she's not. But it would not be long before everybody around her believed her. Once she's in the hospital, she signs the paperwork, she gets ready, she puts her clothes on because they make you wear different clothes, and she goes to bed around 2 to 3 a.m. She falls asleep for about 20 minutes before something crazy happens. So after she falls asleep, she wakes up to the nurses screaming. She hears them screaming, and she shoots up, and she looks in the corner of her room, and the nurse is not in her room. She's actually screaming over the intercom, and Tall Man is in the corner. And she said that Tall Man looked sad. He did not look okay. So she quietly asks, "Are you okay?" After she says this, she just hears the nurse say over the intercom, "What is that? Who is in your room?" Kimberly, how did they get in there? She's feeling overwhelmed because she's like, "Oh my God, the nurse is seeing what I'm seeing. This is insane." She looks over at Tall Man, and he looks angry. Now, he doesn't have an expression on his face ever. She can tell that he's angry by the pouring out of his eyes. So a ton of is just pouring out of his eyes at this point. He then looks directly up at the camera with his eyes like that and looks at the nurse. And you just hear the nurse say, "Kim, get out of there! Get out of there with that thing!" So Kimberly darts out of the room, and she goes and asks the nurse. She's like, "Did you see it? You saw it. You saw it. You saw it too." And the nurse is like, "Yes, I saw it, sweetie. I saw it." So the next night, the same nurse that was there before comes up to her and says, "Listen," she questions her about the papers, like what she wrote on the papers. And then she says to her, "You're going to be the only kid on the psych ward tonight. I'm so sorry. It's usually more fun, but I'm going to be your nurse tonight. Okay? So don't be afraid. I will be here." Now it's about 5 p.m. at this point, and it's time for dinner. So she goes to eat dinner, and while she's eating dinner, she sees this little girl come up, and she didn't think there was any kids on the floor, but she sees the little girl. She doesn't have any food, and so she offers her some food. But then the nurse comes along, and she comes to take her tray, because at this point it's now 30 minutes later. It's 5:30, and they take your tray at 5:30. And as soon as she goes to take her tray, the nurse looks over, sees the little girl, and the little girl just starts forming into a different thing, and she's forming into Tall Man. So the nurse at this point just starts screaming, and she grabs Kimberly's arm and she brings her into the activity room, and they hide in the activity room. She locks the door, and they're just both huddled in the corner staring because there's a mirror out there and they can see Tall Man. And Tall Man just looks over at the nurse and just starts waving at her with blood coming out of his eyes. So the nurse just starts screaming her head off, and Kimberly is like, you need to be quiet. You have to be quiet. If you are not quiet, he will not leave. That's how he leaves. Just ignore him, pretend like he's not there, and he will leave. So the nurse does this, and he eventually leaves. Now, Kimberly was eventually discharged, and she said that still to this day, she still deals with Tall Man. And I can email her back if you guys want another story about Tall Man, or just to see what's going on with her right now, honestly. Drop that in the comments if you want me to do that. But what do you guys think happened here? Because in my personal opinion, and from some of the stories that I've gotten and some of the stories that I'm going to tell you guys, when SA is involved, I think it brings negative energy just into the whole situation. I think that it is so demonic, just the act of it in itself, that it could have manifested solely because of this situation. Now, these are just my thoughts. I don't know what you guys think, but drop in the comments what you guys think happened here. And also, like, isn't that crazy that she was validated by the nurse that was in the psych ward? That is crazy to me, and I'm so happy for her. Go Kimberly. Please be respectful in these comments. What happened to her was absolutely terrible. My name is Kaisa, and I give true scary stories every single night that you guys submit to me. So if you want to submit me your true scary story, my email is in my bio. It is kaisaspooky@gmail.com. Just make sure that you let me know if you want to be tagged or use your real name, and give as much detail as possible. Also, some of you guys asked me about this sweater I was wearing yesterday. It's actually a set. This color is really loud, so I'm going to show it to you in a different color. So here it is in red. It's the best material. It's super stretchy. If you see it, that is crazy stretchy. So they have a million different colors. You can wear it off the shoulder like this, or you can wear it like this. It's so comfortable. It's knitted material, and it's super cute. I like to wear the shirt with other things also. Like, I wear the shirt out and stuff. So yeah, it's kind of versatile. But I'll drop the link for you guys right there. Other than that, I just need you guys to do one more thing for me. And what is that? Have a spooky night. Love you guys. See you in the next one.
Remember how I be telling y'all, if you hear somebody knocking on your door, or you hear somebody's voice but no one is home, never open the door? Scary story time. And this story this time is actually not my dad's story. It's my friend's story. She's also Haitian, and she wanted to share her story with you guys. So when her family was supposed to come to this country, coming from Haiti, they kept it a secret. And this is actually a common thing, because even with me too, when I was coming, it was an absolute secret. Nobody knew but me, my dad, and my grandma, and my uncle. And my uncle was a pastor. Well, is a pastor. But the reason for that is people are jealous, and people will do anything to stop you from where you need to be. When they see you prospering and it's not them, I've seen it happen so many times in Haiti. Anyway, so that was the case for her and her family. At the time, it was her and her brother. And when I tell y'all, it was an absolute secret. Nobody knew they were coming to America but the people living in their house. It was literally top secret, which is why it was shocking to her mom when she got a phone call from a church member. Mind y'all, they weren't even that close. Like, that church member, it's not like they were like best friends. It was just somebody they went to church with, and she actually lived very far too. Now, there was this lady that they knew, that everybody knew was a lugau, but it wasn't their business, you feel me? Like, that's the lady's problem. That's her, she do her. Anyway, so the mom gets a phone call from the church member, and the church member tells her mom, I had a dream, and I know that you guys are leaving. You guys are going to America, but so-and-so, the lady that's a lugau, does not like that. And she has something planned for y'all so that it does not happen. Mind y'all, they don't even know how the lugau lady found out that they're leaving. But, I mean, you know, lugau. The church member tells her from her dream that she was told to tell her mom these instructions. First one is, of course, make sure that nobody else finds out. The second one was there was this uniform they used to wear to church for Saturday services. She tells them to keep that uniform and all of their clothes that they're going to wear until the day that they leave, and make sure that nobody touches those clothes. And the last thing that she told her to do was that the car that was supposed to transport them to the airport, change it. Absolutely change it. So they did all of that. They prayed, they followed directions and stuff like that, and everything worked out well. They got here thinking it was over, but woo, was it far from over.
I'm gonna try this for the second time, because when I recorded the first time, it was no audio recorded. But now I'm just gonna speed it up. This is what happened when the ghost followed me home from New Orleans. When we were leaving New Orleans and we were all in the car, I felt that there was a man with me, and I told everybody in the car there was a man with us, and we all did our own little separate prayers to try to get him to go ahead and stay where he was at, and he couldn't come with us, right? Of course, sometimes it doesn't always work depending on the people that you're around and all that. So I get back to Atlanta. About 3-4 days after that, things start moving around in my house, okay? One, I start realizing that there's somebody peeking around corners in here like this. And I would see shit like this. So after seeing that a lot, I started to acknowledge the spirit, like, who are you? What do you want? Get out, you know? And then it started touching stuff in here. So this was me and my girlfriend was going through this where we will be sitting somewhere alone and things start moving around in the house. There was a time where I was sitting over here on this couch, and all the way across the room over here, I saw my shoe slowly lean and fall off of something. There was a different time I was sitting right here on the couch, and you see that bag over there? That bag is hooked onto some clips. It unhooked itself and fell to the floor. Dead silent in here. I'm chilling, sitting on the couch by myself, and I just have to look up and be like, stop touching shit, right? So this was the ongoing theme for about a week and a half in my house. Was like things were moving around. They didn't have no business moving around. And I talked to my girlfriend about it. She had been seeing something walking around in the house. Things had been moving around, and she had felt something poke her. Now, this is when I knew that it was getting serious. I could feel him, and I could see things about him in my mind's eye. I could see what he looked like. I could see about how old he was. I could see what his energy was like. I could see what he was wearing. So I was starting to get a feel and an idea for him and like why he was around. He wasn't a bad guy at all, kind of like a guy that like died young in his early 20s, and I was just the only light that he could see in that area, so he followed me all the way home. But I was laying in the room, right? I went to go take a nap. My girlfriend told me like, go ahead and take a nap. So I went in the room to take a nap. She was out here in the kitchen where I'm currently at. I'm in the bedroom on the end of the bed taking a nap, right? Laid underneath it like this extra little blanket or whatever, just laying on the end of the bed. I felt her walk into the room, and you know, you can kind of hear the air change or whatever, like when somebody's coming close to you. I felt her and heard her walk into the room, and it felt like she walked into the room, looked at me, noticed I was asleep, and then touched my head and gave me a kiss and walked out. Now, when she walked in, when I heard her walk in the room, I woke up. My eyes was closed, but I woke up. I thought she was going to ask me something. So I woke up, and I felt the fingertips touch the back of my head, and I felt my head kind of get this weird little tingle on the inside, and I felt the really, really light. And I turned directly around, and the room was empty. So I sat up, and I said, oh, okay. Came out here and noticed she was in the kitchen. Told her what happened as soon as it happened, right? So after that, I honestly sat in here one day when he started moving shit around again and fucking with the lights. Like, he was making the lights flicker and stuff. So I told him that he had to leave. But the thing about me is I don't just like banish spirits to go and you know, haunt somebody else. I send you on your way. So I called in my angels and my spirit guides and my ancestors to come in and help this guy move on if he was willing to do so. And he was willing to do so. He just didn't know where to go or how to do it. So we helped him. He moved on. He's gone. My house is clean. That was the spirit I brought with me from New Orleans. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this experience. If you went to New Orleans and brought something back with you, if you're from New Orleans, if you've ever been haunted, if you're a medium, whatever, let me know in the comments.
Can we show them the older homestead?
Okay, yeah, let's go. As you know.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Was that you?
Yeah, that's on either side.
It went to both.
Yeah.
So one of my followers named Cassandra just told me that she caught a ghost on camera, and the story behind it is actually insane. Before I begin, if you have a horror story that you want me to read, go ahead and follow my Instagram that's linked in my bio and DM me your story. So Cassandra is 28 and she lives in a quiet neighborhood outside of the city. She told me she's a first-time mom, and like a lot of new parents, she keeps close eye on her kid. She told me she bought one of those high-end baby monitors with night vision and a two-way microphone, and she thought buying this would give her her peace of mind. It did at first, and for the first couple of months, she told me it worked the way that it was supposed to be working. Cassandra would check on her little boy from the kitchen, from the living room, from every room around the house, but then she told me she started to notice weird things starting to happen. Sometimes late at night, Cassandra said she would glance at the screen and would see the crib blanket moving slightly. All of this happening, by the way, even though the baby was sound asleep. Other times, she would hear a faint crackle on the audio feed. It was static-like, and she told me she would hear this even when the whole entire house was quiet. She told me, however, she would just shrug it off because the monitors glitch, sometimes Wi-Fi cuts, and that's absolutely no big deal. Until one night, about 3 weeks ago. Cassandra told me it was around 2:30 a.m. She woke up thirsty and decided to check the baby monitor before heading to the kitchen. She told me she looked at the screen and froze. The night vision feed showed her baby's crib with a gray light shining. Now her son was asleep and breathing softly. But behind the crib in the corner of the nursery, Cassandra told me she saw a shape. It wasn't clear, but it was there. A tall, thin figure, darker than the shadows, standing perfectly still. Cassandra told me in this moment she blinked hard, thinking that maybe she was overtired. But the figure didn't move after she blinked, and the monitor audio clicked. She told me a low whisper bled through the speaker. Static at first, but then a voice. It was faint, but she swears she heard shh. Cassandra told me her heart was pounding and she bolted up the stairs into that nursery room. She threw the door open and flicked the lights on to where her baby was sound asleep. The room was completely empty, and the corner where she swears she saw that figure, there was nothing there. She told me she even ran back to her room to grab the monitor, and when she checked it, the figure still wasn't there. The next night, Cassandra told me it got worse. At 3:11 a.m., she was woken by the monitor alarm. She looked at the screen and saw the same corner, but now her baby was sitting up, wide-eyed, staring at something just out of frame, and even saying this is giving me chills. She told me in this moment she pressed the microphone button and whispered, "It's okay, mommy's here." But what came out of the monitor speaker wasn't her voice. She told me it was a man's deep, soft voice saying her baby's name. Once again, Cassandra sprinted into the room where she found her son crying. He was reaching out to her, but again, no one was there. No open windows, no sign of anyone being inside. Cassandra told me when she told her husband and even her parents the next day, they all gave her the same look, stressed, concerned, but not really believing. It was the same thing. You're tired, you're seeing things. But she told me last week was the breaking point. Cassandra said she was downstairs folding laundry when all of a sudden, when she looked at the baby monitor, it turned black and white. Static crawling across the screen. Then she told me out of the static, an image formed. Not live footage, but an image from the nursery room from a weird angle. Like someone was standing inside of the crib looking out. Then all of a sudden, she told me the monitor went completely black. She was tapping it repeatedly, and when it turned back on, she told me she saw herself in the monitor, standing at the bottom of the stairs, laundry basket in her hand. The camera wasn't even facing that direction. The camera couldn't even be able to face that direction, because in order for the camera to be facing that direction where she could be able to see herself, it had to be outside of the room. She told me her stomach dropped and the monitor went black again. That's when she heard a boom, and when she went upstairs, the monitor was on the ground. After that, she unplugged the monitor, yanked the batteries out, honestly just anything to shut it off. Now Cassandra said she keeps her phone next to her at night, and a separate motion camera mounted above the crib that shares the camera activity with her phone. She told me the weird paranormal activity has not stopped, but she's still hoping to catch something concrete, something that she can show people that keep telling her that it's all in her head. She told me she'll update when something new happens, and I'll of course tell you guys too. But until then, Cassandra told me every single night at 3 a.m. she wakes up and checks the feed. Not for her baby, but for the shadow she knows is still there, watching both her and her baby through the monitor.
Alright, so I'm about to go to bed, but I wanted to ask, do you want to hear a scary story? And I'd be very curious to know if anyone has a similar story. So, when I was about 4 years old, my mom and my aunt dropped me and my cousin off at this couple's house. And they were supposed to babysit us so that they could go out, and they were going to come pick us up the next morning. So, we go to their house, and they have these two daughters, and me and my cousin we're taken to their room because it's nighttime and they're going to go to sleep. And the one girl sleeps on one side of the room and the other one sleeps in the other. and they have these little twin beds, and one of the girls is like, oh, you want to come and lay down with me? And then the other girl's like asking my cousin, you want to come lay with me? So we both go and lay down in these girls' beds. I wake up on the living room floor. I'm no longer in this little girl's bed. My cousin's nowhere to be found. And I'm laying on the floor on like a mat with a pillow, and this is where it gets really weird. There's like hundreds, if not thousands, of these kind of purple, pink, fuzzy looking things, and they're all over the floor, like crawling around. They're crawling up the walls. I look up, and like it's all over the walls, the painting that this woman has, I guess, over her fireplace. They're everywhere. Thousands of these like fluffy, purplish, dark colored looking, I don't know, creatures, you know? They were almost like spiders, but not. And I couldn't physically feel them because they were crawling all around me, on me, but I could see them. So I start screaming, and the woman runs out, and I'm like, all these things are spiders. And she said, no, they're not spiders. Don't worry. Like, she acknowledges that they're there, but she said they're not spiders. And so she's like, come on, I'll take you to the girls' room. And I'm like, where's my cousin? And she's like, oh, she's laying in my bed. Don't worry about it, which was weird too. And so we go, and she drops me off with the daughters again. And one of the daughters, the same one that I had laid down with, was like, do you want to come lay down with me? And I go lay down with her, and I'm laying, like her bed's up against the wall, and I'm got my back turned to her, and I'm looking down on the ground watching these things, because they're in their room too, but there's less of them, and they're crawling around on the floor. And I asked the little girl, like, what are those? And she says, they won't hurt you. But she doesn't tell me what they are, and granted, I'm like a little girl. I'm 4, I think I'm around 4. And I'm watching these things, and one of them dives and hits the wall. It's like goes flying over and then hits the wall. And then it's this little tiny, like, a box shows up where it hits. Guys, I feel so crazy even saying this, but it looks like the box looks like a black and white miniature, like this big TV screen with a man talking inside of it, almost like a newscast person. I don't hear what he's saying, but he's talking, and then it like fizzles out and disappears. I look over on the floor again. Another one does it, flies over, lands on the wall, and does it again. And it happens over and over again. And that's kind of all I remember until, like, I know my mom and my aunt came and picked us up in the morning, and they came and got us. I remember trying to explain what had happened, but the lady tells my mom, like, oh, Cammie had a nightmare and woke up, and she was really upset. But that was pretty much it. Like, everyone just thought it was a bad dream that I had. But here's something weird. So, when my older daughter, she's 17 now, she was about 6 or 7. I saw her on the floor, kind of like crawling around, like smiling at something. And I'm like, what are you smiling at? And she's like, it's so cute. It's got these little legs, and it's like a purplish, pinkish, black color, and it's just hopping around. I'm like, what? I don't see anything. And then she looks up into like the corner by the ceiling, where the wall meets up in the ceiling. And she's like staring at it and smiling and going, oh, it's so cute and little. And I was like, I rebuke that in Jesus' name. I told her, don't follow it around. Don't mess with it. Don't talk to it. Don't, whatever that is, like, don't do that. And I didn't want to scare her or freak her out, because she wasn't, like me, but I saw thousands of whatever these were. I don't know if it was the same thing that she was singing, but it was definitely strange that she was singing something that kind of sounded like what I had seen. So I rebuked that. I told her to rebuke it. I was like, please don't mess with stuff like that. But, you know, I know some people will be like, oh, stuff like that, it's harmless. Or some people will say, Cammie, you're crazy. It was a dream. But it wasn't a dream. I know it wasn't. I've always felt in my heart that it was never a dream. I don't know what it was, and I don't have an answer for it. But if you've ever had something similar, please comment down below, because no one has ever shared anything like that with me before other than my daughter. So I'm very curious about anyone's thoughts on that.
ወደ ኪችን ሂዱ። የምን ሰዓት እንደሆነ ታውቃላችሁ? ከሌሊቱ 6 ሰዓት ሆኗል። በመጀመሪያ ክፉና መጥፎ መንፈስ አለ ብላችሁ እማታምኑ ሰዎች ዊች ክራፍት ስፒሪቹዋል ነገሮች ላይ ብዙ ያልሆናችሁ ሰዎች ስክሮል አድርጉ። ይሄ የእናንተ ቤት አይደለም። ዛሬም እኛ ሀገር ውስጥ ከገጠራማ ስፍራ የተላከ ሜሴጅ አለ። እሱን አነብላችኋለሁ። ታሪኩን ከሰማችሁ በኋላ አስተያየት ካላችሁ ኮሜንት ሴክሽን ላይ ማስቀመጥ ትችላላችሁ፣ ወይም ደግሞ ተመሳሳይ የገጠማችሁ ነገር ካለም ኮሜንት ላይ መጻፍ ትችላላችሁ። አመሰግናለሁ ያቢ። እናቴ 3 ልጆች ነበሯት፣ 2 ወንድና 1 ሴት። እናም የመጀመሪያው ታላቅ ልጅ ነኝ። በእኛ ቤት 75%ቱን ስራ የምሰራው እኔ ነኝ። ታዲያ ነገሩ የተከሰተው 2009 ዓመተ ምህረት ላይ ነው። የሆነ ጊዜ እናቴ ታመመች። እናም በቤት የምንቀምሰው ውሃ የለንም። በእኛ ሀገር ማታ ዶሮ ከጮኸ በኋላ ነግቷል ተብሎ ማንም ሰው ይንቀሳቀሳል እና ዶሮ ስለጮኸ እናቴ ተነስና ሄደህ ከወንዝ ውሃ አምጣ አለችኝ። ከታናናሾቼ ጋር እንዳልሄድ ገና ዱጬ ናቸው። ብቻዬን ተነሳውና ጀሪካን ወስጄ ጉዞዬን ቀጠልኩ። በሰዓቱ ጨረቃ በርታ ነበርና የመንገዱን እኩሌታ ከሄድኩ በኋላ አንድ ባትሪ አብርቶ የሚመጣ ሰው ይታየኛል እና በባህላችን የአባትህን እኩያ አቦ ወይም አባ የእናትህንም እኩያ አዬ ወይም እማ ብለህ ትጠራለህ። ነገር ግን ባትሪ ይዞ ወደ እኔ እየመጣ ያለው ሰው አንዲት ሴት እንደሆነች ተረዳው። በጀርባዋም ጀሪካን አዝላ ነበር። እኔ ግን የመሰለኝ ውሃ ቀድታ እየመጣች ነው። አጠገቤ ጋር ስትደርስ አዬ አልኳት። ይቺ ሴቷን በቅጽበት ወደ እሳት ተቀየረች። እሳቱ ሰማይ ደረሰ፣ ጩኸትም ነበር። እናም ወዲያውኑ ተሰወረች። እኔም ላብ ጠመቀኝ። እንደ ውሃ ላቤ ይወርድ ጀመር። ለካ ያየኋት ሴት ሰይጣን ነበረች። እኔ ግን ጉዞዬን ቀጠልኩኝ። ኩሬው ወይም ወንዙ ጋር ደረስኩ። ግን ውሃዬን ስቀዳ ውሃው እንደ ድንጋይ ደረቀ። ለካ በባህላችን ውሃ ለመቅዳት የመጀመሪያው ሰው ከሆንክ መናገር ያሉብህ ቃላቶችና መፈጸም ያሉብህ ድርጊቶች አሉ። በሰዓቱ ስለተረበሽኩኝ አላስተዋልኩም። በኋላ ትዝ ሲለኝ ቃላቶቹን መናገር ጀመርኩ። እንዲህም አልኩኝ፣ የኩሬው ስም ሀ እንበለውና አንተ ሀ ሆይ ከእንቅልፍ ብቀሰቅስህ ብረብሽህ ስለተጠማን ነው እና ከእንቅልፍህ ንቃ፣ እኛም ከጥማታችን እንርካ አልኩና አሸዋ ዘግኜ ጣልኩበት። ውሃውንም ቀዳ። ግን ሰይጣኑ ስለመታኝ ለ3 ወር ታመምኩኝ። እናም የኔ ገጠመኝ ይህንን ይመስላል። አመሰግናለሁ። ሌላም ከፈለግሽ አለኝ። የዚህ ልጅ ሌላም ታሪክ መስማት የምትፈልጉ ከሆነ ኮሜንት ሴክሽን ላይ ፓርት 2 ብላችሁ ጻፉ። ይሁን ሳልዘጋው በፊት እንደ ሪማይንደር የኦንላይን እንግሊዘኛ ቋንቋ ክላሳችን እንደቀጠለ ነው። ማንበብ መጻፍና መናገር፣ እንግሊዘኛን ማንበብ መጻፍ መናገር ያካትታል። ከቤታችሁ ሆናችሁ በኢንተርኔትና በስልክ ብቻ ነው የምትማሩት። የትኛውም ሌቭል ላይ ያላችሁ ምንም የማታቁም የተወሰነ የምታቁም መማር ትችላላችሁ። አሁንም ዲስካውንቱ እንደቀጠለ ነው። መስቀል እስኪያልፍ ድረስ ማለት ነው። ዲስካውንቱ ይቀጥላል። መመዝገብ ትችላላችሁ። ቲክቶክ ላይ ጻፉልኝ። ከቀናችሁ 2 ሰዓት ነው የሚያስፈልጋችሁ። ከስራም ስትመለሱ ከትምህርት ቤትም ስትመለሱ የተስተካከለ ሰዓት ስለሆነ ጥሩ ኦፖርቹኒቲ ነው። በ2018 ታዲያ እንግሊዘኛ ቋንቋ የማይገባው ሰው አይኖርም ተባብለናል ኦልሬዲ። ስለዚህ አስቡበት፣ ተዘጋጁበት፣ ተመዝገቡና እኛ ጋር እናንተን ለማሰልጠን ነው 24/7 የቆም ነው። ስለዚህ ኮንታክት አድርጉኝ፣ እመዘግባችኋለሁ። ደህና ደሩ።
What the fuck was that? Bro!
What's going on around you?
I don't know. I'm frozen. I am frozen.
Did the window
Sean.
break?
So tell me why there's a creature living in Central Park, New York City, and no one seems to know about it. Before I begin, if you have a horror story that you want me to read, follow my Instagram that's linked in my bio and send me your horror stories through my DMs. So one of my followers named Mark sent in this story, and he lives on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And he told me that if there's one thing to know about him, is that he loves running. Jogging clears his mind, keeps him sharp, and in a city like New York, it's one of the only ways he finds peace in all of the chaos. But Mark told me he also knows the city has its shadows. He's not naive. He knows about the late night street characters, the weird encounters, the people you learn to cross the street to avoid. Living in New York basically means always being cautious. And more importantly, always being aware. So one night after a long day, Mark told me he decided to run through Central Park. The sun was setting, spilling the last bit of orange across the skyline, and he thought it'd be good to clear his head before heading back to his apartment. He told me at first the park felt calm. The air was cool, the city sounds muffled by the trees, and every so often he'd pass someone else walking with a flashlight or with a dog. But the deeper he jogged into the trails, the fewer people he saw. The sky dimmed fast, the lights barely lit the paths, and eventually the only thing guiding him was the beam of his flashlight. He told me he reached the area near one of the small ponds, and that's when it happened. Mark told me he slowed his pace as his light cut across the grass near the water, and he saw something. At first, he thought it was a person, someone standing off to the side, hunched forward. But he told me as his eyes adjusted, the details made his stomach drop. The figure was slumped over, pale, breathing heavy, like each inhale rattled in his chest. He told me it didn't look like it had clothes on. Its skin was so light it almost seemed gray underneath the moonlight. And then he told me the detail that still makes him shiver. He told me he swore he saw drool dripping from its mouth, glistening in the light, and it didn't move. It just stood there, slouched and twitching. In this moment, Mark froze in place, and his mind tried to rationalize what it could be. Maybe it was someone drunk, or maybe someone homeless. Maybe just another weird NYC moment, but his gut screamed otherwise. Mark told me that was his cue to run. Without another glance, Mark turned around and sprinted down the trail. He told me his chest burned, his legs pumped, and the only thing he could focus on was getting out of that park, getting back to light, to people, to safety. And that's when Mark told me he heard it. He heard footsteps, heavy, fast behind him. Something was chasing him and he did not dare look back. But he told me every part of him felt it closing in on him. And then he told me he heard the sound. It was an unnatural sound. The best I can make out of it is that it sounded like it was low, strained, and did not sound human. He told me the hairs on his neck stood up. His lungs were screaming for air, but he did not stop. He ran and ran, cutting across paths that he barely even recognized. He was just so desperate for any sign of any person out there. Finally, after what felt like forever, he spotted the glow of streetlights ahead. Benches, a few people talking, oblivious to the nightmare that he had just ran from. He told me he sprinted past them, breathless. And when he finally risked turning around, he saw nothing. The path behind him was empty and the trees swayed in the breeze. No pale figure, no drooling mouth, no footsteps that were chasing after him. It was just complete silence. He told me the people that he passed by were looking at him like he was crazy. Mark was drenched in sweat, he was dry heaving, and he was wide-eyed like he had just seen death himself. The only thing Mark told me he could do in that moment was give a little shaky smile and pretend like nothing had ever happened. But deep down, he knew what he saw and he knew what he heard. That same night, instead of walking home, Mark told me he took a taxi. He sat in the back seat, gripping his knees, staring out the window as the cab carried him back to the safety of his apartment. Mark told me ever since that incident, he has not gone back to jogging at Central Park at night again. And that's because whatever was out there that night at the pond, it wasn't just in his head. And he told me if it had caught him, he most definitely would not have been here to tell me that story.